Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in live here on a Tuesday night for you. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your evening. We are live on all platforms known to man. And I got to give a special shout out to my good friends there who had seen the show on Roku. That's right. We're on Roku. We're on iHeartRadio and all social media platforms. All you got to do is like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future past shows. I am stacked with interviews, and we got a lot to talk about. Ryan Ward, Lakers reporter, going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes. And we've also got Philip Rossman-Reich for Locked On Magic to talk about Paolo Banchero and what the future holds for the Orlando Magic. But, man, we got a lot to really discuss. Stanley Cup final has been great. We've gotten a lot of physical play. And the NBA Finals. We're going back to Dallas. And we'll see what happens there between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. But Ryan Ward joining us here in a couple minutes. My big thing with the Stanley Cup final is, I told you guys before, I broke this down with this or that of the players I would take in this best of seven Stanley Cup final, championship stage. And the big thing I said is that even though I love Connor McDavid and I like Leon Draisaitl and I like a bunch of their offensive pieces, and Chris Knoblauch has done an amazing job to get the Edmonton Oilers into the Stanley Cup final. But the biggest difference maker was, and what I went with a coach with experience. He's gone back-to-back Stanley Cup final appearances in Paul Maurice, but I'm also taking the experienced goaltender in Sergei Bobrovsky. And boy, did he do it again. So the Panthers now lead 2-0 in the series. And Bobrovsky shut out the Oilers 3-0. And the Oilers ended up leading 1-0 until the Panthers scored 4 unanswered goals that would give them a 2-0 comfortable lead. But it's as I've said previously, is that this was going to be the series. What's my goaltending? What's my veteran coach experience? And who honestly can take the reins to make the team score goals, get important shot blocks, and at the same time moves the momentum and control their side? The Florida Panthers easily looked like that. And so I'm not taking anything away from what the Oilers have gone through, the journey road, and all the rest of it. But you could see this series looks like it could be over in 5 or 6. And again, the Oilers, I think, could take a game or two away. But the Panthers are deep. They figured out their offensive problems that they did not have last year in the Cup final against the Vegas Golden Knights. Tarasenko and Kyle Okposo, they got those guys in the trade deadline. But you know who else is also having a really good Stanley Cup final? Carter Verhaeghe. The guy is Florida's ghost when nobody could see him. And all of a sudden, when he's got the puck and he goes in and scores, the guy's immaculate. Carter Verhaeghe, man, oh man, absolutely dominant and phenomenal. And I know people are probably giving me backlash. Why did you go with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and this and that when Carter Verhaeghe is dominating right now in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Well, I'm not taking anything away from the kid. The kid will give you a goal or two when Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, and several other offensive players are not on their game. And Carter Verhaeghe definitely serves up to be that catalyst that the Panthers know they love and they needed. So, and again, Sam Reinhart had a fantastic year this year, scoring almost close to 60 goals this year, and has served to be that big-time catalyst that they needed. So my gut feeling is I think this thing could be over in 5 or 6. The goaltending is just way too good. The coaching experience, again, Chris Knobloch has done a fantastic job. But you could see this thing's going to be ready to be over. But I love Connor McDavid, and I'm so happy he got to this point. I'm hoping at some point in my lifetime, I will see Mike Trout in the World Series, hopefully a lot faster and sooner than later before his career ends. But you could tell how lopsided this thing looks. And Edmonton is bringing physicality. We saw Fogley, who ended up getting ejected because of that knee-to-knee contact on one of the other forwards. So there's physical play I'm getting. There's aggressive offense, but more importantly, that's lopsided is the shutdown goaltending that is shutting down the speedy offense of Edmonton. So they've done a great job. I think with the way things are rolling, Florida will win their first ever Stanley Cup in franchise history. They've been to their third one already, and I think this is the time. But also, case in point, this is now 5 straight years. 5 straight years that we've had a Florida team in the Stanley Cup. So you recall the back-to-back title championships from the Tampa Bay Lightning. They then go again for the 3rd straight year, lost to the Colorado Avalanche, and then all of a sudden we flip-flop it and we go to the Florida Panthers twice now. So this team, it's definitely taking notice, and they are on the map. But Florida's doing everything right. The coaching is immaculate. The players, everyone picks each other up. They're playing physical and they're playing shutdown, but they are opening up opportunities when they get it. So, again, embrace it. I love this moment for the Florida Panthers. I really do. So I think game 3, maybe Edmonton, they'll be at home. It'll be a different scenario and a different scenery from there. Hopefully they'll get some juice from their fans and in the building, and then maybe they might take away a game in game 3. Not sure, but I am excited about it. I think it's been a great Stanley Cup final thus far. I got everything, and we'll see now with what Edmonton does in game 3. All right, so, we finally got the news headliner about the Lakers job, which I know is a very hefty job. Dan Hurley passed on it, 6 years, $70 million. It was very, very difficult. And so joining us here on the show, who covers a lot about the Los Angeles Lakers, and we got a lot of questions to answer from here, but welcoming up and onto the show, Ryan Ward. All right, Ryan, it's on to the next one. After we just got the news on Dan Hurley, what was the reaction to this? Because to me personally, I think Dan made the smart move and the right move for a few reasons. Because number one, he joked about it. He cannot afford a divorce, post people. And, you're coming off of a back-to-back national championship. in the March Madness tournament. He's probably going to look for a three-peat. But how did you kind of see this really, panning out after he just said, thanks, Lakers, but no thanks?
It was strange, to be honest with you. It's once the news dropped, nobody saw it coming. It was all about JJ Redick, and James Borrego's kind of been floating around there, and that was it. And it was more of like, who's going to be on his coaching staff. It was no hint of Hurley or anybody else really that was in serious contention. So it's been a weird offseason already. I mean, it always is crazy for the Lakers, always. I mean, you just expect that. But not hearing anything about this before it went down, and then literally 4 days of mayhem and still not hearing anything, and then everything coming out yesterday was a roller coaster ride, man. And I think we're just gonna hop on another one, and it's just gonna be it's sad, right? Because it's gonna be more of like begging JJ to take the job. When I've heard conflicting reports about that too, he's it rubbed him the wrong way, or he's not digging it now. I mean, who knows? It's just nuts. And then him with the podcast with LeBron, what happens with that if he takes the job? It's just I'm exhausted, to be honest with you. I'm totally tired, dude. That break-in at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning that day was just crazy. I was just lucky enough to be not able to sleep that night, and to see the report. I'm like, oh my God. I honestly thought I was dreaming. When you you're on your phone, you fall asleep with the phone in your hand, then you wake up and you look at it and it's something nuts. That's what I thought. And then as I slowly woke up, I'm like, oh my God, this is real. And then all my guys from Lakers Nation are like, hey, we got to jump on a podcast. We got to talk about this and all this stuff. And there was a ton. The sad part is there was a ton of optimism about this, right? Because we went from a first timer with zero coaching experience, which is nuts for the Lakers job, especially. Like Charlotte Hornets, fine. Bring in a guy with no coaching experience, roll the dice. But this is the 17 banners hanging in the rafters, right? Mm-hmm. You need a proven guy, especially if you want to convince LeBron to stay and have an AD at 31. It's just a whirlwind, man. And I don't know where they go from here. I honestly don't. I feel like we're going to hear reports until the finals are over when JJ can officially sign his thing. But I don't know. It's exciting, but it's at the same time it's kind of depressing because you feel like it's the end of their winning ways for a while. This could be the beginning of somewhat of a rebuilding process. It just kind of has it feels the same way as when Kobe's reign kind of ended, It's like everybody was coming to the grips with the fact, okay, we got to start looking at young guys. There could be a rebuild here. So I don't know, man. It's been crazy. And I anticipate more craziness.
Yeah, and I can tell you, and as somebody experienced in the West Coast, I mean, I lived in Vegas my entire life, and it is like nothing but 24/7 town. And it's like you get no sleep. Thank God I could at least go to a Taco Bell at 3 a.m. in the morning when I could just, get something in my body to kind of recover from the craziness. But I'm so glad you kind of touched upon that, because I felt like, and I'm going to explain this a little more on the show, but listen, 3 big brands in major sports: the Lakers, the Cowboys, and the New York Yankees. Whenever you hear the term rebuild, well, people freak out. They're just like, oh, we're a big money market. Why are we even using the term rebuild? I don't even like that word. So in many cases, a retool, they kind of shoot a lot for. And I made a point about this. If you look back into the 2008 New York Yankees, I mean, they were filled with stars: Jason Giambi, Bobby Abreu, Mike Mussina. And it was just like, well, what are you shooting for? To have the most stars on your roster, and then you're finishing up third in the AL East?
I think that's kind of the Yankee way, isn't it?
It is. And so I'm like, I look at that, And I get it. It was the last year of the original Yankee Stadium before they built the new one. But then what did they do the offseason next year? Oh, they retooled. They got rid of all the old. They bring in CC Sabathia, AJ Burnett, Mark Teixeira, and many, many players. They retooled this puppy, and then they win the AL East, and they go to win the World Series. So when I look at this with the Lakers, I'm just like, I'm dealing with LeBron and Anthony Davis, which is already a handful.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the front offices with Jeannie Buss, which, let me clarify, she is nowhere close to her father. And I mean, and I love, the Buss fan.
She'd be the first to admit that, I think.
Yeah. And so when I look at this is a much harder job than people anticipate. I mean, I think of this like with the Dallas Cowboys. You got Steven and Jerry Jones breathing down your neck like, I got to make the Cowboys better to where they're making the playoffs and eventually winning playoff games. I mean, I mean, with all this roller coaster, like you said, I mean, this has to be really difficult to really find the right guy for the job to really fill this in to keep the Lakers relevant, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I thought that Hurley kind of fit the bill, right? Like, he had the pedigree, 2 back-to-back national titles, arguably the best college coach right now. The problem was it was slim pickings for the head coaching market in the first place, right? I think Coach Bud was the last prominent guy, and then there's Vogel, who I'm sure if they called, he would laugh and hang up, right? So yeah, I ain't doing that again, dude. I'm done. Yeah, I'm gonna take a vacation and spend this money that the Suns are paying me. But yeah, they got to get a guy. And I jokingly said right after, I'm like, well, Coach K's been in contact. Why don't you just give the money to him? He's old as hell, but 77, I think. But I mean, at this point, they're just trying to get through 2 years, I think. Yeah. From the sounds of it, they want to convince. Because I mean, a lot of people have said too, there's been inklings like, well, maybe LeBron's like, I'm out after all this. I don't need to do this anymore. I mean, he's kind of mentioned that winning's not really the top priority for him right now. He's satisfied with what he's done in his career, and that's fine. He's one of the greatest of all time. MJ is the greatest, by the way. Yeah, it's a because they can't admit they're rebuilding, right? Because then season ticket holders are not going to re-up, and it's one of those, like you said, it's one of those prestigious franchises that always has to be contending or at least talk like they're trying to, right? Instead of these other ones are just like, okay, yeah, we're obviously rebuilding. It's a rebuilding process. So they kind of got to BS their way through the whole thing. And I think this really took them for a loop, I think the reason they fired him was because AD wasn't digging him. He's just like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Get him out, please. And he's the future, obviously. So, yeah, appease him. But then they're just like, well, damn, there's nobody around. There's nobody around to hire. There's no game changer. There's no big name. And like I said, Bud was the last one. But I think they thought if they get Bud, it's like a slightly better version of Ham, right? Same kind of schemes, Ham learned from him. So I get that. I guess that makes sense. But now they're stuck in a rut, and everybody's making fun of them. I didn't think it was like everybody's saying, why didn't they throw more money at him? It's like it doesn't sound like that was the thing with Hurley. Like you said, I don't. You compare the two situations, and it's kind of a win-win for him either way. But the chances of him going back and winning a third title compared to going on and winning for the Lakers in the next 2 years, it's like UConn up here, Lakers down here, right?
Right. Because
the West is just stacked, and they already can't compete with the West as currently constructed. And what a coach is going to come in and all of a sudden change all that. There's no Phil Jackson out there. There's no Pat Riley. There's all the really great coaches are taken, and they're not going anywhere. Spoelstra, Popovich, Kerr, Ty Lue. I thought he was their kind of their last hope if it didn't work out with the Clippers. Like he just kind of moves over, or they work out some kind of crazy trade or something. But they're stuck in a rut. And I mean, who knows? Like tomorrow we could wake up and there's a whole nother name that comes out. Like Jay Wright was mentioned, the old Villanova coach. I thought that was interesting, but then that's gone dead silent. Like no one is mentioning anything about that. But if I was a insider, I'd be hunting him down, right? Get a quote, get something I can use, just get that name going. But that hasn't happened, which I find really strange. So it makes me think he's not an option.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he quit coaching for a reason. He was coaching like 21 years straight at Villanova. He must have just been exhausted. And he's like 62, I think. So he's 10, 11 years older than Hurley. So I don't know what they're going to do, man. And I don't think anybody knows. Even LeBron, you know?
Yeah, it's just really hard to kind of put the pieces together for the Lakers. But I've said it this way. I mean, when I thought of this, when they were approaching and targeting Dan Hurley, I felt like, is this literally the same feeling that I'm getting when they tried to push for Jerry Tarkanian at one point, and then that didn't end up working? They tried Coach K, that didn't work out.
Yeah,
so like
the 20-year anniversary of trying to do that, man. It's kind of sad when you throw a ton of money at a college coach for such a prestigious position, and they just say no thanks. Like it is a slap in the face. It's like somebody said, give him the Godfather offer. But the thing is, I saw something today. Somebody said that no coach in LA has lasted more than 3 years since Phil Jackson left.
That's right.
That's pretty telling, dude. That means that is a revolving door, and that's not going to change unless you get some generational guy. And that comes once in a blue moon. You know, it just doesn't happen very often, especially with coaches in today's game where they got to deal with egos and player movement like crazy. It's like, it's hard to keep anything together. And then, you know, with the Lakers, they just blamed injuries for the past 3 years or ever since they won the title. So I don't know, man. It's I kind of compared it to, it's kind of a crazy comparison, but I think head coaching in the NBA or in any sport really is a thankless job, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you're like a Phil Jackson or like one of these guys that just come along every once in a while. It's like being a referee, right? Nobody likes them. Nobody agrees with them, but they have to be there, right? They have to run the game. Just like a coach has to run an offense. It has to, you know, tell you guys to play defense. It's just a really hard job. So, and I wouldn't run to do it. That's probably why they're going after a first timer.
Yeah, and that's my thought on it, is because when I look at a prestigious franchise like the Lakers, I'm like, and me personally, I'm evaluating a few things. Is number one, can I deal with the egos I'm already dealing with right now with LeBron and AD? What's my roster shaping like as far as my future, like, you know, draft and develop? I mean, because I'm looking at it this way. I watched the Pacers. I watched the Magic. I watched a bunch of teams that are young. OKC, they got young players. They're in developments to where they are hitting their primes. And then all of a sudden, it's like, do I have that? Or do I need to make some moves to start bringing in capital? So when I think about this with the Lakers, I'll be honest with you, I like Austin Reeves. But when people put the narrative like he is above a lot of these top talents, I'm like, whoa, timeout. Like, he gives me the shots, but I'm not going to be the guy that I'm going to heavily rely my franchise on a guy like that.
And if you do, you're kind of screwed, I think.
Yeah, so I got to get something up in return. Now, I think my issue with this was, and I look at college hoops, the one and done deal, John Calipari, it don't work. Like, you got to start developing these guys, develop them to where they are NBA ready, because I don't hear about these guys until like 3rd, 4th, 5th year in the NBA. And then they're just like, oh, they're finally in their primes. You got to get, like, the NFL, we're lucky enough that we're getting content every day, because these rookies every year in the draft, they're ready to play. They're ready to win. So I'm like, if college hoops could get in the same page, then maybe we might actually get some more like potential stars, like what we may end up seeing. I mean, Anthony Edwards came from a bad draft, but he is potentially building his stardom where he could be a face of the league. Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say the Lakers really got to now be behind closed doors, really critically think about this and say, look, we love our brand, but we need players that are eventually going to be the future of this franchise.
Well, like you were saying, how it's a lot of young teams that have kind of developed, right? They haven't gone on and traded for somebody like Minnesota. I think that's all homegrown guys, right? Outside of like Conley and Gobert, right?
Yep.
But they're not the faces of the franchise. It's Cat and Ant. So that's one example. OKC, all homegrown guys, all of them, and a ton of picks that Presti is stockpiled. And then you got what, Dallas, homegrown except for Kyrie and like PJ Washington. I'm sure a few others, but for the most part, their star is somebody that they drafted, they didn't bring in. I think it's a changing of the guard kind of thing. All the old superstars have finally flipped.
Yeah.
The young guys are taking over. The old guys are taking the back seat. No Steph, no KD, no LeBron deep in the playoffs. That's crazy. I don't remember the last time that happened. And I think that's going to be the norm. You're going to see these guys, Ant, Wembanyama. I can't wait to see what that guy does with like a good teammate to play alongside. But that's another interesting thing, what you said about the college game. I think they can get paid now, right? Wasn't there something that just passed?
The NIL now is starting to pay up a lot of players. They're getting some endorsement deals. Oh, yeah.
So there's that. So there's more incentive to stay in college, right? Like they could be like, hey, I'm not going to make a ton right out the gate, or I'm going to land with a really crappy franchise. Why don't I just stay here and make some more money, right? While winning and getting better and increasing, my draftability, I guess. But then you look at the international aspect too. All the top guys that get drafted are all international guys now. Like Wembanyama last year, that Sarr kid, Alex Sarr, and he's projected to go number 1. It's all, and then you look at the top 5 players in the NBA. Yeah, like Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, and then I don't know, who would you say is 5th? I mean, like Shea.
I mean, it's mixtures, yeah. I mean, SGA and a couple other players. I mean, there's some players to plug in. I mean, from the top 10s, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's the NBA is just evolving in a different way, and it's something that we haven't seen before. And I think the Lakers are really struggling to adapt, because what they would always do is they would bring in these young guys, make them names, right, and then trade them. The minute they had value, put them together, get a big name, right? Yeah. That's what they did. That's what they did with AD. I thought the best course of action that year was to keep Ingram, Randall, Ball, Hart, all these like glue guys and like great role players and potential stars, and sign Paul George. I thought that made a lot of sense. But what do? They mortgage all their youth and their future, send it out for a guy who gets hurt constantly. I mean, AD's great, but he's not exactly reliable in terms of, he's always banged up. It's tough to see him going all the way through the playoffs and winning consistently, right? They did it 1 year and they haven't been able to do it since. I mean, they went to the West Finals, but there was no competition in the West last year. Now it's completely changed. So it's hard to see that path 5 years down the road, competing against these guys while the Lakers guys get older. And they trade all their picks, so they have no youth. And the young guys are good, but they're not great. Like Max Christie, this JHS kid who didn't prove anything last year. Max Lewis. It's just nobody that kind of moves the needle. So, or that you can use in trades.
Yeah. No,
it's a rough road ahead, man. It really is.
It really is. And my final question to you is, because I know covering this team and I know how very exciting yet exhausting it can get,
Gray hairs, bro. Gray hairs. Both sides.
But now kind of coming to this, this fork in the road right now for the Lakers. I mean, in your opinion, with finding solutions for this, because you're dealing with these two players, you're dealing with the pressure right now from the front offices and the ownership, and trying to find the guy. I just think for the Lakers, they just really need to start moving off some stuff. I need to start getting some capital. How would you solve this thing? Is there really like a solution to this issue that could at the very least, hey, we may not be as competitive as many of our teams right now, like Dallas, like, many teams in the West.
Yeah.
But we could certainly get into the middle of the pack to kind of keep us on radar until that move really becomes the crucial move for the Lakers.
You got to trade your stars. That's the only way to do it. You got to start fresh. You can't milk a 40-year-old and a guy who can barely stay on the court. I mean, AD played great last year, played like 75 games or 76 or whatever. But the more I looked at it, the more I saw that they simply couldn't compete with the best in the West. I'm just like, this is over. This is like, but they keep trying to prolong it. And I don't know if it's just to make money and put butts in the seats or whatever, but the second I heard that there was a potential to draft Bronny, and I saw that Bronny averaged like 4 points in college, and he came off the bench, I'm like, what are we doing? That makes zero sense. You would never have done that before. Why are you doing that now?
Which, and to be fair, I mean, the cardiac arrest is very, very scary. That's why I'm hoping if he comes in this league, I mean, I understand vouching, but coming into this league after such a life-threatening injury like this,
right?
Hopefully, I hope for the best of his future that he is everything that people continuously hype him up to be.
Well, I hope he's got a future in basketball. I just think when you mix that kind of nepotism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's already kind of turmoil in the locker room. Okay, picture this. I always say this when people ask me. It's like, picture this scenario, right? They go into the season. Bronny goes to the G League to start. He shows some promise, not like blowing you away. And then you got LeBron. When is my kid coming up? Right. When is my kid coming up? Regardless if they're winning or losing, right? You bring him up and he sucks, right? And he's bad, like obviously bad, like Westbrook bad, like where it's so painfully obvious. The rest of the team's going to turn on him like that.
Yeah. Because
they're all trying to keep their jobs, for one. And for two, why the hell is this kid getting the opportunity that I worked my ass off for? Right. Mm-hmm. It's just a recipe for disaster. The kid literally has to be close, I'd say as good as Austin Reeves to merit being drafted by this team. Yeah. Otherwise, that's a disaster. Unless they put him in South Bay Lakers for like 2 years and you don't hear from him, cool. But I just don't see LeBron doing that, man. I mean, he said he had a quote last year where he said something in the locker room like, "Oh, my kid could start for this team, or he could play with this team right now," because it was like during a losing streak or something. I'm like, you're out of your mind, dude. They all say you're a great basketball mind. You say some crazy stuff like that. Like, imagine what all his teammates were thinking. Like, yeah, right. But they're not going to say anything. They're not going to jeopardize their status on the team. I mean, Clutch Sports has kind of run the team the last like 3 years. It's that's another thing. I've never seen an agency take over a team completely. I'm sure there's other examples everywhere elsewhere, like CAA having a ton of agents or players on one team or whatever. But this is different, right? This is where you look at Clutch Sports and you go, this guy's got a good chance to counter the Lakers. It's like Trae Young was Clutch Sports, and there was all these rumors. And then he changed agencies to CAA. And I was like, well, that's over. He's not coming now. No way they're trading for a guy who just said later, right?
Yeah.
There's no way. So it's just I think you give over too much control like this, and it just gets out of hand, and it clearly has, right? They're going in the opposite direction. So I think you make a drastic change, and who knows? Maybe LeBron does it for him. He's just like, hey, guys, I'm leaving. But maybe I'll do a sign and trade with this said team, and you can get a couple picks back or something. I think he did that for Cleveland. I'm not sure.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If he did something like that, then that's the start. And then you ask AD, hey, are you still willing to play here? Mm-hmm. And what if he says, no, I want to go home. I want to go to Chicago, right? And they get like DeRozan and Caruso or something back. Then you got, it's it's going to be a crappy couple of years, but you got to start somewhere, right? At some point, they have to start from scratch.
Yeah, 100%. And at least, you can build some hope, and hopefully, this organization, they could get themselves right. But hopefully, again, I mean, I loved watching the Lakers for years, but I'm hoping they figure this out. They get consistent, get everybody up on the same page, especially Rob Pelinka and them. But hopefully they could really figure this out. But Ryan, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for stopping by, taking the time, man. Appreciate you. Again, I'm hoping a big brand. I got some hope. I got some, some capital, and hopefully something that'll get me to love the purple and gold again.
Well, I hope that too. Hopefully I think it's going to be a crazy few weeks, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be one thing after the other. And it's going to be the next thing. And it's like, oh, it's going to be a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting though. But like I said, there's plenty of options, and we'll see what happens ahead. Appreciate you, Ryan. Enjoy the rest of the week, man. Definitely rest up after this one, and we'll see you soon on the next season.
All right, brother.
All right, take care. Well, there you go. Ryan Ward, Lakers reporter. You can see the gray hairs right from here. That was a handful from here. So shifting on from moving to the West Coast to down to the Southeast, like I said, Florida sports is just unbelievable. 5 years that Florida has been in the Stanley Cup final with Tampa and the Florida Panthers. I've been happy and excited about it. You watch Tampa Bay win a Super Bowl. You watching Miami with the fastest, receiving core, and then Jacksonville. Hopefully they pick themselves back up. But joining us, who I thought, honestly, I was really impressed by, but a lot of young names. Paolo Banchero, we got a lot to talk about from here. Philip Rossman-Reich joining us. Philip, you've been covering this team for a long time now. For young players, Shaquille O'Neal, Victor Oladipo, Dwight Howard, and now Paolo Banchero. This was more than exceeding expectations for what the Magic have been building up for quite some time, right?
Yeah, you expect a young team, obviously, to kind of grow up and get better gradually. But I don't think any of us saw the Magic kind of taking the leap that they took this season. And really, we all expected Paolo Banchero was going to be in the All-Star conversation, but for him to have the playoff series that he had in his debut, it really feels like this isn't just, they got the number one pick, so obviously they got a talented player. It's like, we've got a dude. We've got a guy that we can really build around. And that's something the Magic haven't had in a decade.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, when I think of the Orlando Magic, you've been through it. You've been through the waves of the real good, the real ugly, and then the kind of, middle of the pack. But I'm very excited for the hopeful of the future because I think of the Magic, OKC, and Indiana that have really played up well to their potential with the draft and development. So when you look back at the playoff run and what the expectations are for next season, I think you got to get a veteran in this building. You got to get somebody that's really going to complement well with Paolo Banchero. What have been some targets you've been evaluating to really kind of get the next step for the Magic?
Yeah, this a big thing that I've been kind of preaching to people is you can't lose what makes this Magic team unique. And the biggest thing that makes them unique is they have 2 6'10" playmaking forwards. You don't want to take the ball too far out of Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner's hands. And so you're kind of threading a very narrow thread because you want to, Paolo's 21, Franz is 22. You want to give them room to explore the canvas a little bit still. Like you're winning, the winning window's open. You're trying to win basketball games. But you still want to give them room to make mistakes and learn what the limits of their games are. But if you watch the playoffs against Cleveland, and look, Orlando got it to 7 games. Like they were half away from winning, maybe less than that. They really needed another ball handler. They really needed an organizer. I agree. They really needed a veteran. I'm a big proponent of what I call the Horace Grant theory, like having a veteran who's been there, won before in your starting lineup, kind of ease, like calming everyone down, helps the young team out a lot. Having Shaq helps too. But Horace, I like the difference between the 94 Magic and the 95 Magic is Horace Grant, in my opinion. And so I think that's something the Magic should be looking for. But Orlando is not looking for someone sort of to get in the way. And so They got a lot of cap room this summer. There's a lot of names we've been looking at. Most of them have been guards and point guards. Malik Monk, D'Angelo Russell, Tyus Jones. We've looked at trades for DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, Anthony Simons. There are a lot of options on the table for this Magic team, and picking the right one and kind of facilitating this team's continued growth is going to be the biggest challenge for them as they look to build off of what they did last season.
Yeah, and I mean, the blueprint of it, I mean, it's built up very well to where they get that right guy that is very open to basically passing the ball, opening up space, attacking the perimeter, and even getting a guy setting up for those wing shots right there. I mean, that's what's going to be the big difference maker. So when you think of, I mean, the coaching side of things really took a huge step because, again, Orlando's been going through coaches and players after player. But when you think about this collectively, I mean, the coaching aspect from the staff, I mean, this really did change a lot to where now, yeah, this team in the East, because the East is wide open. I mean, outside of Boston, there's many mixtures of teams. I mean, Milwaukee just went through a burnout, and then a bunch of other teams. This has got to get you excited for what potentially the Magic can do the next few years.
Yeah, and look, you're looking at the playoffs as they are now. We got a 5 seed in the finals in Dallas. The Magic were the 5 seed in the East this year. Indiana was a 6 seed, and they took advantage of an injured Milwaukee team. And you whatever path you have to get there, you get there. Orlando was the 2 seed in the East, or 3 seed in the East. The last Sunday before the final week of the season, they had a really tough schedule to end the season. They fell back to 5. And could have fallen to 8, actually, if they lost the last game of the season. That's how tight the margins are in the Eastern Conference. They have to consider themselves right in the mix. And so, Orlando obviously built themselves on their defense. They've got a star player in Paolo Banchero who showed he could step up on the big stage. They got a lot of young talent. It's now about, okay, how do we get the offense up to a level where it's at least competent and getting easier shots for our best players so that they don't have to work as hard, so that they're able to play later into games and have the energy and stamina to play later in the games. And, it's kind of a simple thing. You just got to add more talent. The Magic have a lot of young guys. They leaned on a lot of young guys. And now you just want a little bit more consistency. Maybe you need outside shooting. Obviously the Magic were 24th in the league in 3-point field goal percentage, 29th in attempts. They had actually the worst offense in the league among all teams that made the postseason. That tells you how good their defense was last year. They just got to find a way to get easier shots and get their best players some easy shots so that they're not working so hard all the time.
Yeah, and it's funny, but at the same time, it makes me happy when the fact that I'm watching small market teams literally work the books, and at the same time they're working the analytics to even really kind of break through and break way to where they can be a competitive and relevant team. I mean, so when I think about this, and I spoke a little briefly about it with college hoops, I mean, besides the women's college sports, I mean, they had a great year. And then when I look at the men's side, we could have done better. But I think when you think of the development and even coming up to the NBA draft, I make the argument, the draft and development, you got to make it better, because it's like this one and done deal. What we've seen in college just doesn't work no more. If I get in a guy that is at least 2-3 years experience in college, like what I'm getting in the NFL on a daily basis, that could help you to really develop, and especially a lot of these marketed teams that could build the relevance. I just hope, honestly, with this NBA lottery, I just really hope that they abolish this thing. I mean, your opinions on this, because honestly, Adam Silver's got to get this right to where they can structurize it, make it consistent, and hoping they could get more domestic stars to be built up where they are really taking the NBA, because it's more international than anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a tricky issue, I think, for the NBA. And the NBA is obviously kind of in bed. Like, they help run USA Basketball, do a lot of the marketing for USA Basketball. It's a development, it's a grassroots problem. I don't think it's an NBA problem. The NBA kind of receives guys as they get them. They have the rules set that it's, you got to spend 1 year in college or be 1 year out of high school. There was talk, at least in this last round, that they were going to get rid of that rule, go back to allowing players to come straight from high school. They eliminated the G League Ignite program because they were no longer competitive with NIL in college. But, I would say one thing, I think the NBA is a lot better prepared now to develop these young players. Mm-hmm. But unlike previous generations, now the NBA has to be a development project. Now the NBA has to, the development that might have taken place in the 80s and 90s in college, where guys become veterans. They understand a higher level of basketball, because they were with, great coaches like Coach K or Dean Smith or Roy Williams or Lon Kruger or whoever, Jim Boeheim, David Thompson, whoever your favorite college coach is. Instead of getting that development and maturity in the college level, the NBA had to kind of take on that responsibility because they were taking players younger and younger. You will notice, though, and yes, the guys at the top are still the guys at the top. Talent always wins. But you'll notice now more and more teams are taking players, or a lot of the successful rookies are players who stayed in school for a long time. Like Jaime Jaquez from Miami is a great example. That is a Heat player through and through. He came in ready to play. And look, you're 21 years old. You're going to get better. You still need some development. But the NBA over the last 10 to 15 years has had to become a development outfit as much as anything else. And so you have to spend time and be patient enough to let young players develop, whether they develop into stars or not. I would argue the NBA for the longest time kind of farmed out making stars to the college game. You went to college, big NCAA tournament, you're entering the league as a star. Because college basketball has become a lot more flat and it's become a lot more, there's a lot more parity in college basketball, I think. Those stars aren't developing the same way anymore. And I think the NBA, frankly, has done a really, and I speak about this as a team, as a person that follows a small market team. The NBA has done a really, really poor job promoting their new wave of stars. Like, I love these playoffs. I think you mentioned it with the previous guest. This playoffs feels like a changing of the guard. It does feel like the baton is being passed. And I'm really excited about that as an NBA fan. But, I think the TV ratings have been pretty good. We don't need to get into, kind of the politics of the TV ratings or whatever it is. But the NBA, I think, has generally done a very poor job telling you Anthony Edwards is worth your time. Luka Doncic is worth your time. Jason Tatum is worth your time. They put LeBron and Steph Curry on TV 30, 40 times a year because they know they're cash cows. They know people will watch them, even though their teams aren't good and their teams are out of the playoffs. The big complaint here in Orlando, Paolo Banchero has had one regular season national TV game on TNT or ESPN since he got drafted. He was the number one pick in the draft. Only one national TV game. We love that he had a big playoffs. I would hope that means the Magic will get 4 or 5, but we're not hoping for much more than that because we know the Lakers will get their 20, 25. The Warriors with Steph Curry will get 20, 25 as well. And it's not that those teams don't deserve it. They're entertaining. They draw eyeballs. But I think a lot of this is now the NBA has to take a little bit more onus to tell its audience, these are stars worth your time. It's not a surprise these guys are doing well in the playoffs.
Yeah. No, 100%. And you know what? What's kind of funny that I would like to add up on it, because I'm watching sports like, the NHL. They've got, these international games where they're playing up in Sweden. They're playing up in a bunch of areas. Major League Baseball just came off of a series with the Phillies and Mets in London. So I'm like, well, if we could trim the games and at least make it to where it's enough for all of the players to be 110% healthy, why not maybe add a little something where if you're going international,
the league does that though. Like the Magic played a game this year in Mexico City against the Hawks. They gave up a home game to play in Mexico City. They have a game in Europe every year. They went to Paris. They went to either Paris or Berlin this year. No, they went to Paris this year. I think it was Cavs Nets. Wembanyama and the Spurs are going next year as well. So, and then they do some international games. They have games up in Canada and on the west part of Canada, since the Raptors are in Toronto. I believe they do games in Abu Dhabi during the preseason as well. They do games overseas. Obviously, they haven't been back to Beijing since the Daryl Morey thing. But the NBA knows, like, this is why I tell people about the NBA. Like, for people who denigrate the NBA, like, the NBA is probably certainly the most popular American sport in the world. Oh, basketball is probably the second most popular sport in the world behind soccer. The NBA is doing fine, getting that international eyeballs on them. It's now about, okay, same thing that happened after Michael Jordan retired. LeBron is about to retire. Steph Curry's going to come right behind him. Kevin Durant's going to be right behind them. How do you kind of pass the baton to the next generation? And we saw this after Jordan retired. It was really hard for the NBA to get people to buy into Allen Iverson. There's maybe a lot tied into there. It took a while for people to buy into Kobe in the way that they ultimately did. It was, they kept saying, this is the next Jordan. It's Grant Hill. It's Iverson. It's Kobe. It's this player, it's T-Mac. It's Carter. It's, they kept trying to find the next Jordan. It's just like, no, just promote these players. And obviously I think we're in a different media environment than we were 10, 15 years ago. And so I think, I think the way the NBA thinks about how to promote their product is, frankly, the NBA is progressive in its business with everything except for their TV placement and how they promote their TV. And I'm hoping, like, bringing in Amazon helps, shift some thoughts and say, okay, we're going to do something a little bit different here. But the NBA just seems so afraid to go away from the players that they've milked for the last 20 years. They're going to have to pass that baton and convince people, like, hey, LeBron is great. We're not saying he's not great. Here's some LeBron for you, but check out some Anthony Edwards. Check out some Luka Doncic. Check out some Tyrese Halliburton. Like, honestly, like, the in-season tournament was a great experiment. I loved what they did with that. The Indiana Pacers being a darling and being a surprise team, they should have had 3-4 national TV games. They should have been a big deal in the immediate aftermath of that. Mm-hmm. They didn't add another national TV game for the Pacers. Pacers only had one national TV game after the in-season tournament, and it was in February after all the hype around them kind of died down. That is, like, I love the Magic to death, obviously. I cover them. They're a slow-down defensive team. They're not a made-for-TV team. The Pacers are, we're going to play fast. We're going to shoot a lot of threes. We're going to push the tempo. That is a made-for-TV team. That Pacers team, and obviously they made the conference finals, so there was something to it. That team should have been on national TV a lot, and they should have been making Tyrese Halliburton a star. And frankly, I see that as a failure on the NBA's part.
I'm such a foodie guy, and I almost want to feel like, what? I need to have a one-on-one conversation with Adam Silver and go to one of the most 5-star buffets that I got and say, oh, try this, try that, get the mind going a little bit. Cause you can never go wrong with having multiple choices, multiple different, flavors, something that could really kind of spice things up that can make the league a lot better with it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the diversity in this league is awesome. The diversity in play styles. I know people like to say it's just a 3-point league, and it's not. If you're watching the games, it's not. And, the NBA has kind of allowed itself to become all about the transaction market. And, obviously you're getting to the point where the transactions are the story again. But I turn on the NBA finals and, with all due respect, I know that the Lakers are a big story. I don't care what's going on with the Danny Hurley story with the Lakers. Yeah. When the NBA finals are about to start, why are you committing a block time to, this coach is Hurley is meeting with the Lakers? That has nothing to do with the game I'm about to watch, the most important game of the season until the next game. Mm-hmm. The NBA finals should be the only story that you care about. And obviously they don't have editorial control over what ESPN and ABC does, but I think that is a statement of, the games aren't important. And when the league and its media partners don't make you feel like the games are important, then the games don't become important. It's a feedback loop.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, hell, the NHL has been really, really good with, televising the Stanley Cup final because the fact of, look, we'll worry about that stuff later. I mean, I'm getting physical play. I'm getting hyper-aggressive offense. I'm getting all of that. And so we'll worry about that come the off season. But at least it's like, okay, we got a little something here, but we'll worry about that a little bit later, And so my final question to you before letting you go, I mean, the Eastern Conference, I mean, I just feel like what I've always said and what I'll say in my ending is Boston, from the initial start of this, they got to end this thing quick because you let this thing go to Game 7. I mean, That's just going to be bad news because we know what Kyrie Irving's done in Game 7s. We know how he's been clutch with it. But you got to end this quick. And it looks like this is what may end up happening from here. So if Boston wins this whole thing, the Eastern Conference now, there's got to be some really good, some move-ups and shake-ups at some point to really make the pivot to make it a better conference than what we're getting right now in the Western Conference, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Boston's obviously really good. I don't want to take anything away from Boston. They look like the best team, and they've looked like the best team in the league all year. They are the best team in the league, and the biggest. I've seen this take kind of around this internet sphere. Dallas is trying to make Boston beat themselves, and Boston has a lot of scars and a lot of demons that they're trying to overcome to finally win this championship with the Tatum and Brown group. They're not falling into those traps yet. We'll see what happens on the road in games 3 and 4. And, again, you're 2 wins away. You just got to get one on the road and makes your life that much easier. But when you look at this Eastern Conference, there's just a lot of turmoil. And so I don't think Boston is as far a runaway as everyone seems to think. Milwaukee's still a really good team. They had a really weird season. They're integrating a really important new player in Damian Lillard. They hired the wrong coach. They fired him midseason. They brought in a new coach. Doc Rivers is going to have, Doc Rivers got them to play defense and really improve their defense, but obviously he didn't have a training camp. So give them a training camp, give them an opportunity to tinker with the roster. Philadelphia was the second best team in the Eastern Conference by net rating when Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey played together. Joel Embiid missing all the time that he missed just killed them. Like they went from the 2 seed to the 7 seed just off the time that Joel Embiid missed. So, can you count on Joel Embiid to be healthy? Maybe, maybe not. The Sixers have a ton of cap room this summer. They're expected to sign, at least someone like Paul George. They'll re-up Maxey. That team's going to be vastly different and vastly improved. New York is super flexible right now. Jalen Brunson is clearly a kind of playoff performer. They have a clear identity. Julius Randle was out for most of the year. He is, if you either believe in him or you don't, but either way, he is a big time player that they'll either add to the mix or a big time trade piece that they'll use to add someone big to the mix. Yeah. Indiana's young. They get Pascal Siakam for a full year. Who knows what's going to happen with Cleveland? Maybe Cleveland breaks apart. Maybe Cleveland stays together. They get the right coach. Who knows? Orlando is, I'll vouch for the Magic. I think the Magic add the right offensive piece, the right point guard to kind of settle them down. Paolo takes another step up into stardom. Franz Wagner's knocking on the door to being an all-star too. That team's defense is really tough. They've played Boston very tough in the past. That's a tough team. And, I live here in Florida long enough. I'm not counting out Miami. Miami always seems to figure things out at some point. Who knows what they're going to do with Jimmy Butler and all that, but Pat Riley always seems to keep that team competitive. Boston's far and away the best team and everyone's chasing them, but I don't think the gap is that far. Like, should Boston be the favorite just looking at all these pieces, if the season started tomorrow? Absolutely. I'm not, you got to knock them off the throne and it's not going to be easy, but I don't think the East is as far down as people think it is. Mm-hmm. The West was more competitive because the East had a lot of injuries in their playoffs. Yeah. The East, I think, is just as competitive. Like I said, on the last day of the season, the Magic were sitting in the 5 seed. If they won, or they're sitting in the 6 seed. If they won, they were the 5 seed. If they lost, they were the 8 seed. That's how tight the margin was in the Eastern Conference. If the Magic had gotten one more win, they would have had home court advantage, possibly be the 3 or the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. It's really, really, really tight in the East, just like it is in the West. And, with the new collective bargaining agreement rules, especially, I think this is an era of parity in the NBA. We're going to see something similar to like what we see in the NFL, where, there are your favorites every year, but you're going to get a lot of new blood deep into the playoffs and a lot of teams that feel like they can win championships.
Boy, I'm getting a lot of nuggets, up on the show that I'm getting super excited for what, the future next season's going to honestly look like. I mean, I'm keeping my eye out, for the off season, how a lot of these teams are going to be showing off their identity of who they are and what they're trying to potentially build. But it's going to be a far, very exciting season nonetheless. And what we just got from this past playoff, is what I'm hoping we get more of that come the next few years. But Philip, appreciate you jumping on by, man. But where can everybody find you to find a little bit of magic there with those Orlando Magic?
Yeah. The best place to find me is, you can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. That's Philip with 1 L. And you can find my written work at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. And you can find my podcast at Locked On Magic, wherever you download podcasts.
There you go, folks. Just to keep you locked on the Orlando Magic right there. Appreciate you, Philip. Appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we will see what the Orlando Magic got in store for us next season.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
No problem. Yeah, well, man, it was an NBA day today on a Tuesday. I absolutely loved it. I'm not going to get full on, Drake where I'm balling up on Tuesday, but great stuff, though. My final thoughts upon it before wrapping it up is, look, I mean, you heard it from both the West Coast and the East Coast. And, I mean, this Laker job is absolutely just pressurizing. It feels daunting. And all it's going to take is the right guy, the smart guy. I'm not looking for an analytics guy. I think ultimately what you got to have in this building is you got to have a guy that is willing to control the egos, control like what is going on with the front office, the roster, the coaching staff. You got to have full control and consistency. And what you're seeing right now with just the movement of the NBA is, are you ready to pass the baton? Are you ready to go into that big shift that everybody has been talking about? OKC's, Orlando's, the Pacers, multiple teams. Now, I know the Kings did not have a great outcome, but even Sacramento is also another organization. Maybe they may end up, changing up a few things, but there's going to be a lot of different waves. But my final thought upon this is, and I know this might tick off some people, but I'm watching the NBA Finals. And here's where I'm going to be very honest about this, is you are seeing how largely the gap between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown really is. Okay, if you were to, let's take both of them off this roster. If you were to put the both of them on a one-on-one court for the next 5 years, who are you going to be investing more? Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown? Me, I am putting my 2 cents on Jaylen Brown. Sorry for a lot of Tatum sexuals out there who are defending Jason Tatum because, one, he can score and all the rest of it. And like, Jake, you're crazy, you're nuts. You don't know anything about Boston basketball. Look at what the Celtics are doing. The Celtics are up 2-0 in the series. Tatum has been playing cruise control basketball while Kristaps Porzingis and Jaylen Brown and multiple Celtic players, Derek White, these guys are all playing offense and defense. And here's Jason Tatum, that even if he won a title and a championship, this was not an individual championship win. This was a collective team win. Okay, this is the team that gelled. Okay, so get the narrative out of your head that Jason Tatum, because how many times have we been hearing this storyline over and over and over again? Like, Jason Tatum's the best, Jason Tatum's this, Jason Tatum. Like, relax. Put the pom-poms down. I'm watching Jaylen Brown, and I think Jaylen Brown arguably is going to be the NBA Finals MVP after he was just the Eastern Conference MVP. Jaylen Brown serves, to me personally, an MVP of this organization more than Tatum, because I'm getting a vocal leader. I've got a guy that could arguably score and is smart and precise with his shots, but he plays more defense than Tatum. He plays better quality defense than Tatum. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking you're picking on Jason Tatum. No, I'm not. I'm being frank. I'm being bluntly honest about this whole thing. I'm America's honesty mind. I am watching with what I'm seeing with my eyes, yes, I'm not an optometrist, but I can see with my eyes when I'm watching sports on television, or even when I'm going to an NBA basketball game. Hell, I could be going down to Ball Arena watching the Denver Nuggets, and I'll tell you exactly how I feel about Nikola Jokic or Jamal Murray, many of them. But I'm watching this right now. This is so lopsided between Dallas and Boston. We could clearly see that. Boston's got more dudes, and Dallas right now, it's like a one-man show, and Kyrie is just shrinking, which you don't want that. Hopefully you can get some juice in Dallas in Game 3. But the point I'm making is that Boston with Joe Mazzulla, and I mean, you got to give them credit. They were dealing with a lot of this with Ime Udoka and a lot of other crap. But you got to give him credit. Joe Mazzulla has really been doing very excellent and really well as a coach. So I give him credit. I give him the best of it. But Jaylen Brown, I'm surrounding my franchise around him for the next 5 years. And I get it with Jason Tatum. He can score. He can do this. But where's his moment? I'm not talking about he's got to score more than 30 points. 25 best. But, I mean, I'm not asking him to make triple doubles. I'm asking him to, can you just take control of the ball? Okay, you're already playing a collective basketball group right now with the Celtics. But can you take control if an injury occurs, or if an inconsistency occurs, or somebody's passing you the ball because you got an open look, and can you make the shot? That's all I'm asking. I mean, Jason Tatum's, he said it before in the last finals against the Warriors. He ain't the superstar. That's not what he's portraying to be. He's a star. But I think when you look at the two of them, it is such polar opposites with the two. So, however you work this thing with Boston over the next few years, because they win this championship, don't start talking about dynasties, because Boston is only winning one championship since 2008. Okay? We're not even talking about dynasties yet. Get 2, 3, maybe potentially 4 more, then come back to me about dynasties. But do you think Jason Tatum, that if, let's say hypothetically, they do build a dynasty, do you think Jason Tatum is going to stick around for as long as they possibly can with this? Maybe. How do you feel? 65, 55? I mean, I'm just watching the polar opposites right now between Brown and Tatum, and it is not even close. Jaylen Brown is vocal, he's physical, he's defensive, and he very much controls everything around him and utilizes the pieces around him when he gets the shots and he gets the opportunities. I'm not picking on Jason Tatum, but sometimes I'm diagnosed. I am literally scanning that heart and hoping I find a dog there. Because right now, I am looking at a pit bull. Or no, scratch that. I am looking at an absolute bully in Jaylen Brown. And you know what I'm getting? I'm getting the cute little poodle in Jason Tatum. Flashy, scores often. Where's the dog? Because a cute poodle is only going to last you very long until there ain't no dog in that dog. So, sorry to have to hurt your feelings, a lot of Tatum sexuals out there, but I'm being bluntly honest. I'm building my future and my franchise around Jaylen Brown before I even build around Jason Tatum. All right, folks, I got to wrap this up, but it has been such a great episode today. Shout out to our guests on the show. Ryan Ward, Lakers reporter, Philip Rossman-Reich for Locked On Magic, absolutely got the best of both worlds in the NBA world. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button to keep you up to date on latest shows. You don't want to miss it. We're on your televisions on Roku now, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms. You can tune in and keep you up to date on the show. Show sponsored by BetUS, with the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final and Major League Baseball cooking up. There's the best bet lines you could choose up from to get you up on your edge of the game with BetUS.com. BetUS, where the game begins. $50 or more with $200% bonus and 30 risk-free bets as well when you join in. That's BetUS.com. SeatGeek as well, so you don't miss out on your favorite sports event, concert with your favorite artists, and so much more. When you find your seat with SeatGeek at the most affordable price, $20 off by using Snake Sports as the promo code to find your seat on SeatGeek. Also available on Google Play and the App Store. Jake the Snake Silva signing off here. See y'all later tomorrow. We got more interviews cooking up here, so tune in on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. See you later, guys.